Major support for Carolina Business Review is provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. And Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Fall football, it is exactly the glamorous nature of this modern gladiator sport that dominates high school, college, professional spectator obsession in the fall. But could soccer ever approach the same recreational preeminence? Welcome again, and thanks so much for supporting the most widely watched source of Carolina business and public policy. I am Chris William, and later in this discussion, a man who would like to leverage the firm grip that he and his group already have on another major league sport into the first major league professional soccer team in the Carolinas. Marcus Smith from Speedway Motorsports and Charlotte Motor Speedway. And in the meantime, our crack pundit panel behind me will get us started in just a moment. Please stay with us.
Gratefully acknowledging support by Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina. Please visit us at southcarolinablues.com. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Barings, a leading global asset management firm dedicated to meeting the evolving investment and capital needs of its clients. Learn more at barings.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Peggy B. McLean, Economic Development Director for Kershaw County, Frank E. Emory Jr., Board Chairman of the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, and special guest Marcus Smith, Chief Executive Officer of Speedway Motorsports and President of Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Welcome to our program. Frank, good to have you back, and Peggy, welcome as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You know, let's start with something easy. The Confederacy in this New South.
Okay.
Talk about that for a
that's
minute.
good.
Yeah.
Don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I would like just one question from you both. And that's this idea is, you know, as so many communities in the South now define what the Confederacy really means. That's what I want to ask you both. What does the Confederacy mean now in the New South, in this new culture? Frank?
You know, I think we're evolving. We're trying to figure that out now. I really do. I think that we're trying to figure out how to think about it. From my perspective in economic development now, I think what it means is it's here. It's here. It's always been here, and we've now got to figure out how we want the rest of the country to think about us. And so, is the Confederacy going to be the thing that defines us, or is it going to be, or said better, the way we understand it today will define us in the future, because people are looking at us trying to decide whether we are tolerant, intolerant, exclusionary, or a good place to be to do business. And so we've got to, and I think it is the facts of it, you know, what actually happened, why it actually happened. I think we need to face those things and then say, and this is where we were, and now we're here going forward.
Yeah, it's our story. I mean, we can make no mistake about it. It is our story, but it's only part of our story. And so how we talk about it, how we treat it, and the message that we're giving others, like for instance, you know, foreign companies, foreign direct investment is very important in the Carolinas.
Do they ask about the Confederate debate that goes on now?
No, and in my county, Kershaw County, a larger part of our story is the Revolutionary War, because we were the site of Revolutionary War battles. So I talk about, you know, the love for our country and the changes that, you know, my community has gone through and helped support through the years. And, you know, both the Carolinas, we're home to a large number of foreign-owned companies who have, I must admit, in my 20 years in economic development, I've never been asked about it.
Well, and let me ask you this one last question, then we need to move on. But in both of you, I'd like to answer this. Do you have confidence, Frank, do you have confidence that the public debate, the public face of this debate is going to get worse before it gets better? Or do you feel like now that it's broken out into the open that we're going to be mostly respectful and reasonable about this debate?
I hope we will be respectful.
Yes.
and reasonable about the debate. I think it is up to business and political leaders and faith leaders to guard against it getting ugly before it gets better. And I go back again, I think, I'm a lawyer, so I guess I always say this, the facts matter. And so let's understand what the facts are, and let's not sugarcoat it, and let's not denigrate anybody. It happened, that's where it is. In some ways we say, well, now what did we learn from that? How can we learn from that? And I do think the South in many ways has the ability to teach the nation a lot about how to move on. And we have the opportunity to teach the nation about how to move on.
Peggy?
I mean, that's true. As long as we allow the conversations to take place and people to speak their minds, and we hope that it is done in a respectful manner. We can't guarantee that, but we need to be prepared for it and let people voice their opinions.
Frank is chairman of the Economic Development Partnership in North Carolina. I know you look at a lot of indicators now, and you talk to a lot of folks across the state.
Yes.
Certainly the folks in commerce. I mean, that's an integral part of what the partnership is. There have been initial numbers around tourism that look pretty good for 2017. 2016 was good,
yes,
even in the face of the House Bill 2 debate, talking about debates. How are you feeling about 2017 in general in North Carolina?
Feeling really good. Feeling really good, really strong. We've got momentum, and it's clear that we have momentum, and we're getting more and more inquiries. So yes, I feel like that's strong. That's a great indicator for us. We are one of the top 6 states in tourism across the country. I'd like for us to move up that ladder some, and we're pushing ways to do that. The best thing I can say about where we are is that all the partners are aligned. I mean, the merchants, the vendors, the recruiters, economic developers, everybody understands the importance of tourism. And I'm sure Peggy would agree that pays us twice, right? I mean, first, somebody comes and they're tourists, but we hope they have a good enough time that they want to come back again on a more serious visit or a different kind of visit to think about maybe relocating or spending more time in our state. So I'm very, very positive about it.
Do you feel like House Bill 2 controversy is firmly in the rearview mirror for the old North State?
Yes, I do. And I think it's on us not to mess it up.
Peggy, not a tourism question, not an economic development question, but I do want to ask you, so SCANA, Santee Cooper are now squarely in the headlines and squarely in the sights of the General Assembly in South Carolina. Who did what? He said, she said. It is about fallout. It is about Lonnie Carter losing his job at Santee Cooper. People have talked about Kevin Marsh, the CEO at SCANA, might be a liability going forward. And it's not about that as much as how did something of these 2 utilities that joined together to build 2 nuclear reactors in Fairfield County that was done in plain sight with regulatory approval and oversight and sanctioning, how has it become something that people are running to the exits from now?
Well, energy production, let me go ahead and just tell you, I worked for an energy company for a number of years in economic development. I worked for Progress Energy, which is now Duke Energy. And I always said the one job in the energy company I didn't want was trying to predict what was going to happen long term. So when we go back and think about when they started this process of nuclear power generation, it was a great idea. And nuclear energy makes a lot of sense. And so they were doing the right things, trying to meet the energy needs of the future and with their forecasting. What you can't forecast are new developments in the industry and in energy production. Fracking. They could not predict that. They could not predict the price of natural gas to go down. So they were doing, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, they were doing the right things. The way that you go about constructing nuclear generation plants is very complex. You have to get approvals, and you have to go through the federal government as well as local, or the state. So they were doing the right things. How it got out of hand, I don't know. I'm sure it didn't help with Westinghouse and the problems that they had and the bankruptcy. And so there obviously was some management issues, but we've done it, they did it the right way. And so they're going to continue to look at now maybe how they could have changed that oversight process.
Yeah, again, I wish we had more time to talk about that. That is just the tip of the iceberg. Thank you both. Stay with us. We're going to bring our guest on in just a moment, but thank you. So coming up next week on our program, it's actually the first part of a two-part look at transportation and infrastructure on site, from the South Carolina Ports Authority in the Lowcountry. We will be at one of the facilities in the South Carolina Ports Authority, specifically the not North Charleston, but Mount Pleasant. Had to get that one right. It's a two-part look. We will include Jim Newsom from the Ports Authority, Christy Hall, South Carolina DOT, among other guests. And then also coming up, Gene Woods now sits atop one of the largest, certainly the largest healthcare providers in the Carolinas, but one of the largest healthcare providers in this nation. Carolina's healthcare system new CEO Gene Woods will be on here as well. For years, Charlotte Motor Speedway and the Smith family have enjoyed and managed a very critical link for the NASCAR universe of racing and commerce. So, why then would Charlotte Motor Speedway President and Speedway Motorsports Chief Executive Officer Marcus Smith completely break that orbit and lead the effort to land what seems like a Major League Soccer club? While both soccer and racing are sports, that's pretty much where the similarity ends. He joins us now, Marcus Smith. Marcus, welcome to the program.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you feel pretty good about now is the time for Major League Soccer in the Carolinas? I
do. And it's for two reasons. One, now is the right time for Major League Soccer in this country. There's been a huge shift to soccer enthusiasm, for the fandom of soccer in our country. More and more people are moving to the United States where soccer is their first sport. And it's also the right time for Major League Soccer because they've identified now is a time that they want to expand. And we've got 4 expansion franchises left. We're in the first round of 2 right now, and we've got an opportunity to land one right here in the Carolinas.
How would you handicap, Marcus, the chances of Charlotte getting that nod?
Well, I would give you 2 phases of that handicap. I would say that if we're lucky enough to get the public support behind our bid to bring a team to Charlotte, meaning we need a good public-private partnership for the stadium and the site, I think our chances are about 90% to land the team. I feel really good about that opportunity. I feel really good about all the interaction and the discussions we've had with Major League Soccer, and that's a really high percentage, I know, but I think we've shown that well to Major League Soccer. If we don't have the public-private support, then I'd say we're kind of dead in the water, and we're not going to be able to put our best foot forward because they need to see a strong public-private partnership that really shows the league that this community is behind that team.
So MLS looks for that kind of structure?
Yeah,
is that public?
They do, and it's similar to really any other major sport out there. Whether it's in Charlotte, there's a great public-private partnership that started with the Panthers and Bank of America Stadium. The Knights have a fantastic stadium in Uptown Charlotte. That's a great community asset, and of course the Hornets. And those assets in Charlotte are a huge part of what makes Charlotte a great place to live and work and play.
Question, Frank?
Yeah, so, well, congratulations on the effort, and I hope it's successful. I want to talk about your other sport, which is racing.
Sure.
Particularly for tourism. How you bring hundreds of thousands of people to North Carolina every year, and particularly to Charlotte. Does anybody ever track, how much of that tourism turns into residences and businesses that are here? It seems to me you all create a great opening for us.
Great question. I don't know how many converts into residency, but I do know that Charlotte Motor Speedway supports about 8,600 jobs throughout a given year, which is,
that's a lot.
According to the last study that we had done last year, I was really surprised that it was that many. But it's amazing, and we have about a $450 million annual economic impact in the region. NASCAR overall has, of course, all the race teams, 90% of all the race teams are located around the Charlotte area and around Charlotte Motor Speedway. And every team has a few hundred employees that are going to work every day to make those cars faster. And it really, and you're talking about not just mechanics, but engineers, NASA scientists that are coming into NASCAR and these NASCAR teams to help them go faster. Lots of technological, advanced technology jobs that are involved in NASCAR race teams today, and the industries that support that.
Peggy?
Oh, I'm kind of interested in the connection with the fans, and this could be the soccer or the NASCAR. But technology has changed the relationship a fan will have with his or her team or his or her player.
Sure.
So what are you guys doing, to keep connected with the fans, like from the track experience or, from potential soccer? How are
Sure.
you, apps, what are y'all using?
Well, it's a great question. We're using all of that, really, all the above. And but I love this question because it kind of goes back to something that's kind of old school for NASCAR fans, but doesn't exist in any other sport, and that's the scanner. So the scanner is this thing where every NASCAR fan, you can rent for about $20 a person a headset that goes over your ears to protect from the loud engine noise. But then you can listen in on your favorite driver, their crew chief, their spotter, and hear what they're doing. And you can hold this device in your hand, a fan vision, that allows you to see what their speed is. You can watch an in-car camera view. It's really fantastic. So if you want to...
Can you imagine that in a football game?
Oh, it'd be great. You'd be listening to the offensive coordinator, talk to the quarterback, talk to the head coach. They might argue about, a pass or a run, and that's what happens in NASCAR for fans every week. So take that one step further, and today I can be at home watching a race on television, but then pull out my phone, use the NASCAR app, and listen in on the same scanner to any driver that I want to, see their in-car camera. It's really an immersive experience for fans, whether you're at the track or at home.
Let's talk about the driver's star. I mean, a lot of folks have said the attendance at places like CMS and some of the other tracks has dropped because the driver has changed. It's not the same experience, and these are my words, Marcus, but it's not the same experience that, a bunch of guys going out there and just mixing it up. Now it's a much more carefully orchestrated brand of this and that, and the gentleman driver, and it's no longer kind of the rough and tumble, elbows out sport that it was that attracted a lot of people.
Sure.
How does that square against not just the drop-in fans, but how do you plan out the arc of what you want to do with racing at Charlotte Motor Speedway and Speedway Motorsports? How does that affect it?
I think it's a great question. If you look across sports entertainment, I think you have to address this broadly because we're in the sports entertainment business, and just like every other sport, every other concert out there. And when you look at football stadiums or baseball parks or basketball arenas that are being built today, they're all smaller in terms of number of seats than they were 10, 20 years ago. Any new stadium or arena has a smaller seating capacity than it used to. But they also have a lot more variety. So you can go to an NBA game and kind of hang out in what would be a sports bar, but it's overlooking the court. Same thing for football, same thing for baseball, and now it's the same thing for NASCAR. So it changes the way that we look when we're building and rebuilding and renovating speedways. We're thinking about the immersive entertainment experience that our fans have at the track. And then when you get to the driver, people are changing. There's a difference out there, and more people want to be a race car driver. It's really phenomenal what we're seeing in the youth racing areas. There are thousands of youth racing leagues out there and races that happen every week. Most recently, William Byron from Charlotte went to school right here in Charlotte, just graduated. He goes to Liberty University now, and he was just named by Hendrick Motorsports to replace one of their drivers in their Cup Series car, which is just phenomenal. And this young guy, who's I think 19 or 20 years old, started racing on a simulator with a computer game and went from that into a small-scale race car that we built in Harrisburg, the Legends race cars, and started racing on a quarter mile right there at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and now he's made it to the big time. Yeah.
Question?
Yeah, so you mentioned 8,600 jobs. That got my full attention.
Yes.
So I'm curious about, do you have the resources you need in this area to train the people? Do we provide the ecosystem to give you what you need to really thrive in that area?
I think, so there's the NASCAR Technical Institute in Mooresville that does a good job of training the technical and mechanical jobs. Okay. But when you get into the more technology-driven jobs, the aeronautics that the race teams are using, marketing jobs that are data-oriented, things like that, I think our university system is doing a great job in training the workforce. And I tell you, the NASCAR ecosystem of jobs is a really high-paying area to get into. So I think training is there, and the desire is there by a lot of people because they see the opportunity, and it's kind of a really fun place to work. If you think about the opportunity to work in the NASCAR world. So I think the training's there, but of course you could always use more. I know. People that know about mechanical things, the mechanical things, the engineering around a car. It's an area that I know car dealerships are looking for more mechanics and technicians, and the race teams are as well.
Peggy?
I'm interested in NASCAR's growth, because it's certainly, I'm from and been a fan at Darlington Raceway in Darlington, South Carolina. Had a little affiliation with that. And
do they have a track down there?
Oh, they have a great track. Come on now.
It's one of the originals, right?
Coming up,
it's the track too tough to tame.
And it's coming up, that's right.
Southern
right.
500.
Southern 500. But what about the growth potential internationally? I mean, the Carolinas are very much home to many international companies. People, flock here. But what about that interest of broadening overseas? What's the future like for that?
Sure. Well, so it's amazing. NASCAR has an international broadcast presence around the world.
Okay.
And fans from all over, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, come to racetracks in the United States to enjoy NASCAR. So we're pulling in international travelers for just about every race. It's amazing to see. I love to bump into fans that have an accent, they're from somewhere else, and they tell us how far they've been. A lot of times they try to work in maybe 2 weekends where they can go to more than one NASCAR race. And then going overseas, years ago we had an exhibition race in Japan. That was quite a trip, and I think the teams just sort of ran out of time on the schedule because we've expanded the schedule back in the U.S. That's kind of pushed out because the NASCAR season right now is the longest season of sports out of all the major leagues. It starts in February in Daytona and finishes in November right before Thanksgiving. And you imagine all the testing that really starts in January. Really the only month off for the entire sport is December. And that's, some people take it off, some people don't. We do sort of declare a truce between Christmas and New Year's in order to let everybody have a rest and some family time.
We have a couple minutes left. And speaking of December, what's your drop dead date for the MLS bid? What do you have to get done?
Well, so
we've
December.
got about a minute.
Sure. Okay. December is the time frame. I don't know the exact day, but MLS will get together as a league, and the owners will get together and decide in December who gets these 2 expansion franchises. That's our deadline. That's what we're shooting for, and hopefully we'll be able to pull together the right public-private partnership that we can bring into Charlotte.
Do you feel like you've got, it's not a fair question to ask you, Marcus, but when you've got initiatives, and I think of Charlotte specifically, this Economic Opportunity Task Force, a great idea. Is it fair to square that against an MLS bid? Are they 2 different initiatives in a community that deserve the respect but how do you fight
Right.
for what you believe in?
Great question. So they're different. They're absolutely different. One helps the other. You know, what we're looking for, and the piece that's been missing has been solely funded by tourism dollars and is earmarked just for tourism spending. That's out of the Charlotte CRVA budget, where the taxes generated from visitors goes into a bucket to help spur on more visitor spending. And that helps jobs. There is a huge, huge sector of jobs in the Carolinas and Charlotte specifically that are great entry-level jobs for people of all backgrounds and be able to get started. And then you've got all the restaurants, all the bars, and entertainment around.
And it wasn't fair. I didn't give you enough time, but thank you. Come back on and talk about it.
Love to.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Oh,
Good to see you.
glad to be here.
Major
Until next
funding
weekend,
for
good night.
Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, Bearings, Grant Thornton, Novant Health, Sunoco, Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, and by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.